after her recent fight with Kyria, there's a good question now over which one is stronger between Urano Metria and Gottfried. Now, I've looked at it from a couple of areas, and I think I can give a fair and easy to understand explanation on at least which one I think is superior and which one I think is going to really be Lucy's biggest spell. And I think really when you look at the two, there's inverse stuff that kind of makes it a little bit hard to gauge against each other, because I mean, for one, when you look at Lucy's last two opponents, you look at Mimi and you look at Kyria. Like Kyria, like as a fighting opponent, definitely seems like it would be much more of a difficult time, just because obviously she's way more aggressive than Mimi. But when you look at the two of them, I'd say like coupled that, Kyria having higher offensive capabilities would make sense, whereas Mimi having much higher durability and like physical fortitude would make sense. So it's like when you look at, say, Lucy defeating the two of them, Lucy physically looked like she was in about the same state. Right afterwards, she was pretty much out of power to the point where her star dresses and stuff would just fall off her body and she just goes back to pretty much full base form. But when you then compare it to, again, like the two scenarios, it's like, well, there's nothing really to kind of say like one that Lucy took, like Lucy put more effort or more power into one, and you can kind of like make an estimation on some of it, but the base feeds, at least as of right now, it's hard to really say off of that. And then when you look at the lore behind them, there is a statement from Hibiki, where he says that, as like studying on Hibiki, it's like the one member of the Triman that I actually enjoy as a character. Somehow I forget him, but I'm always worried because his power is such a danger to plots, just because he can just almost do anything with OP internet magic pretty much. But he said that the spell Urano Metria, and obviously he's the one that uploaded into Lucy's head, is the top celestial wizard spell. Now, it's hard to fully say that, because this was before we knew about Gottfried, and obviously information can later override and overrule something, because like maybe at some point what you were given wasn't the full picture and what you knew about, what you were kind of like unaware and whatnot. Like it's just a different thing. And as well, on top of that, you can just have literally new things. Like somebody could have, like, a arc later invented Urano Metria 2 even better. But there's nothing really to kind of like gauge the idea of like, well, which one is better based off of right now, at least from Lucy's perspective, because we're talking about Lucy's arsenal, not like the spells in a broader area, is like we can't really tell right now based off of what Lucy's done of which one is stronger. Now, here's my stance on it, though. When you look at the two spells, I think Gottfried, when similar to Lucy, when she's using Gemini to turn, she turns Gemini into herself to pretty much get a full double on Urano Metria. When she's using Gottfried and when she was using her Gemini Aquarius star dress, I would assume that similar to when she's made the copy of herself, the one that she's using actually for the magic, she would, like the Hisui and Yukino clones would have their same level of magic. We don't know entirely how the star dress combo version works. We know how Gemini works at a base, but obviously this is an upgraded version, so it's kind of, it's in a little shaky ground of where you want to use old rulings for it. But when you see, it's like, okay, well, I think it's safe to assume that Yukino and Hisui's water clones would have about the same level of power as the normal ones, or at least Lucy at the time, because obviously like the versions that we saw were like pretty much, they were in the same outfits really that we even saw them in that art. I think the only difference is like Yukino didn't have her cape at the time when they cast Gottfried. I think that's the only difference. But I mean, like, it doesn't have to be the exact one. It's just at some point during that, obviously by how Gemini works and by how it was going off of Lucy's memories and stuff. So when you look at the two spells, again, and the reason I wanted to bring up the whole Hisui, Yukino, water clones, magic thing is because I think it is a big role in how the structure of the spells work. Because Gottfried, as Lucy said, is celestial trinity magic. So I would assume, based off of the naming, and obviously as we've seen it both times, requires 3. I assume that in the anime, again, I'd have to rewatch the arc that she says that they need 3. I don't know why they wouldn't. Or if it was just like 3 was the requirement. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to go relook at that arc. Just on the specific wording. As far as I know, just because it is Trinity magic, as Lucy says. So it's like, I'm just going to assume 3. like without having to fact check myself. Like I could look up the wiki, but I think I'm fine at least off of the guess that Trinity magic is going to require 3. So when you look at that though, and you look at say Urano Metria, the Urano Metria in its base, obviously the difference right off the bat is Lucy can cast Urano Metria by herself, whereas I would assume she does in fact still require 3 celestial spirit wizards to cast Gottfried. So like when you look at the mechanics, at least from that, and you look at like how she uses Urano Metria for a Tyrant, obviously making the Gemini copy of herself, which is a straight double, I think it's safe to assume that in a set structure, you compare just what Lucy's done so far with Urano Metria and Gottfried, I would say Gottfried is currently stronger, just based off, again, the Trinity magic, how it works. This is like, there's also the fact that we don't have like a good comparative of Urano Metria and Gottfried of where they sit versus like the characters they took out. But we do actually have a good Kyria related feat that Gottfried is stronger than Laxus's Roaring Thunder, because Roaring Thunder didn't do nearly as much damage to Kyria that Gottfried did, and Kyria was still conscious after getting hit by Roaring Thunder for a brief period of time, whereas like the second she got hit by Gottfried, she's just unconscious. So clearly that attack is more powerful than, and it's base Laxus, but I mean Laxus only really has like the one upgrade until he actually gets Dragon Force. I mean, nobody cares about the shitty Lacrimo Dragon Force that 2nd and 3rd gen kind of just get for free. But when you look at that and you say like, okay, that's at least something to kind of gauge where that spell is at. You can't really kind of use it because we don't really know, like, would Urano Metria have done that with the double? Who knows? I will say, like, when you look at the base one and you'd say like, okay, I think Gottfried at its current standing is stronger. But the thing about that is from the naming, and again, this could differ. Lucy could invent something beyond this. Who knows? When you look at it / Trinity magic, I assume Trinity means it's stuck at 3. Which means if Lucy wants to get more, like Lucy wants Gottfried to be more powerful, she has to get more powerful. Whereas the thing about Urano Metria, which is a bit of a cheat, is the Gemini aspect of it. Because say like Urano Metria as just Lucy, obviously is 1. But when you take into account Gemini, and obviously now the expanding capabilities of Gemini through the Stardress mix abilities, like say Lucy ends up doing Aquarius and Gemini again, and she, instead of making Hisui and Yukino, she just makes 2 Lucys. And then bam, Urano Metria goes into triple. What happens if Lucy makes 4 clones? There's a much higher level of potential with Urano Metria, just because Urano Metria has a way of instantly doubling its power, like stacking onto it every time. Because Lucy has ways of making copies of herself, and we know those copies, because of how Gemini works, is a 1-to-1. So Gottfried, as far as we know, being stuck at 3 is only going to be stuck at 3, and it's going to always be that way. Because like even if Lucy made 3 Lucys instead of Yukino and Hisui, well, I guess she'd only make 2 if 3 Lucys involved. That would still obviously be still set to 3, and anything beyond that would need Lucy herself to get more powerful. Whereas like Lucy, obviously getting more powerful would make Urano Metria more powerful, but say like Lucy, instead of gaining a higher power level, she just expanded what she could do with her Aquarius Gemini dress. Because technically, as long as she could keep making additional clones, she would be like, she wouldn't have to get more powerful in her base, because she would have just a way to continuously stack onto something and just continuously make it more powerful. Obviously, that's something that would be really crazy for her to do, and we haven't seen her do anything like that yet. We've seen her do scraps and bits along the way, but we haven't seen, obviously, Lucy just continues making Lucy clones to do some like ×10 Urano Metria. That's something that maybe eventually, who knows, could be, could not. But as far as I know, it's possible based off of now, because it used to just be the double with Gemini, but now it's Gemini Aquarius, just says like she can just make continuous clones. So we'll see how that all plays out afterwards. So at least at my stance, like I said, I think Gottfried at a core level right now is stronger, but Urano Metria's level of like Urano Metria's potential and just how it can combine with the overpowered abilities of Gemini and the Aquarius combined could make it scarier in the long run. I still think Lucy needs to develop a new spell, like develop her own version, something beyond both of these as like the new top celestial spirit magic. But then I'll have to say that for another video. But other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, but run the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Run that, appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.